Hi, everybody. You guys enjoying the conference? Yeah. How about last night? I thought that event was amazing. Awesome. Good, good, good. I hate the show of hands stuff, but I'm just curious. How many of you have new here for the first time? Oh, wow. Oh, that's huge. Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the benefits of this event is the unique ability to be close to your peers and ask real questions and get great information. So these gentlemen and I have no desire to be talking heads. What we hope to be is sort of a guide in the dialogue and to get your engagement. And I'm hoping you're here because franchise relations is important to you, correct? Or you didn't like the other session, so you just figured this one was probably more interesting. And I've been in a few of those, so I wanted to share with you some thoughts if I could actually find the file that I had, but I thought that Shannon's comments yesterday were extremely telling about franchise relations. I don't know how you guys felt about that, but he made a lot of comments that to me were just direct hits with franchise relations. Who remembers some of those comments from yesterday? Okay.
Communicate with your franchisees.
Listen to your franchisees, communicate with your franchisees, have your franchisees teach because people want to learn from them, from each other than from us. I mean, I really thought that everything he did was sort of a lesson in franchise relations. So I think that kind of tees up one thing. And I guess my question for you guys is, to you, and anyone just tell me, what is franchise relations? What is it? Anybody want to take a shot? Yeah.
It's the harmony between the franchise and the franchisee.
Can you say it a little louder?
It's the harmony between the franchisor and the franchisee and all the stakeholders involved around.
Okay, so harmony, balance, yeah.
It's fun watching them become successful. Their success, I'm only successful when they're successful.
Very true. Okay, any other thoughts, comments? Yes, sir.
Everything that's not in the FDD.
Yeah, definitely everything that's not in the FDD, definitely. So I have a simple definition that I have always kind of lived by, but it's everything you do or don't do to invest in the quality of the relationship you have with your franchisees. And I want you to think about the don't do part, because the don't do part was, I think, a lot of what Shannon talked about yesterday, which can lead to a lot of very difficult issues in the organization. So we're going to cover a lot of topics. I would encourage you, if I put a question to the panel and you've had an experience with it, these guys are going to chime in. You jump in and chime in and share your experience. If you've got an issue, a conflict, or whatever it may be, this is the safe space for you to talk about it versus sit and think about something you're facing but maybe not be willing to share it, because we have all been there, and franchising is not for the faint of heart, as you all know. It's a great model, but it's a lot of work. So I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves, and then we'll move on to the questions. So Nick, you want to start out?
Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Lopez, founder and CEO of Lime Painting, and I'm based out of Denver, Colorado.
I'm Charlie Graves, the CEO of Athletic Republic. We're a sports performance training brand, so the athleticism side of training, so speed, power, agility. And stealing a piece from David Barr's comments yesterday, my why is to help transform potential into performance. Athletic potential into athletic performance, business franchise performance into business performance. So glad to be here.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Richie Huffman. I'm the president and founder of Celebrate Schools, which is a chain of preschools.
Okay, guys, so starting from Nick, how long have you been franchising? How many locations do you have? Tell us a little more about your experience in franchise relations.
Yeah, so I started my painting career in college, ran a paint company called Spartan College Painters for 5 years, and started Lime Painting 10 years ago. Joined the IFA 7 years ago and started franchising 5 years ago, and we have 90 locations.
Our business is 33 years old. It was actually started at the Moscow Goodwill Games in 1986. First license was in 1990. I bought the company from the founder and turned it into a franchise brand and made every mistake humanly possible for the first 5 years until I joined IFA 10 years ago, and now we have 80 units open.
80 seems to be the theme here. 30 years started, and then 4 years ago we began franchising model. We just signed our 80th award with about 120 development deals in the pipeline.
Awesome, awesome. So highly qualified panel. And for those of you that may or may not know me, my name is Steve Greenbaum. I'm the founder of a retail shipping brand called Postnet. Did that for over 25 years. It was a great 25 years. And sold the company in 2017. At that point, we were nearly 700 locations in 13 countries. And went on to do a little work building a multi-brand platform with a private equity group for a couple years. Had done some investing, advising, and board work with a handful of companies, and now have invested and am an emerging franchisor myself with a new brand. So we all have a lot of experience. We've got a lot to share. I think it'd be great to start with the thing that you probably need to be asking yourself. And I don't know how we dialogue this, but I think it's really important. I think that you brought this up, Richie, which was, have you thought about what kind of relationship you want to have with your franchisees? And so I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but the reason why we thought it was relevant, and we're happy to dialogue this with you, is because I have worked with brands that have said, we're not a family, because that could be really obligatory, and hey, listen, I got enough issues with my own family, because families are messy too. And then I've had other people, like many in the audience, that probably think that they are a family, we are a family, we're in this together, and you're in it heart and soul. Are there any thoughts or comments on that, on what type of relationship you'd like to have with your franchisees? Is this something that would be worth dialoguing? Anyone have any feedback? That's what I thought.
I thought, in many ways, it starts as teacher, right? We bring somebody into our systems and we have to teach them how we operate. Eventually, you want it to transform into partner, so that they're a symbiotic, that harmony that you just talked about what that relationship is. And there's a lot of transgressions that happen in between there to get it. The hard part is where we fall off of it.
Yep.
It's easy to be a teacher. It's great to be a partner. It's when things aren't either of those that become difficult.
Agreed.
I propose that opening question because I think that's where it all begins. What do I want this relationship to look like between franchisee and franchisor? And in our organization, we don't even use the word franchisee. We use franchise partner consistently because that is the culture that we are trying to promote, that we are partners in this relationship. So I think step number one for us was just identify what does this relationship want to look like. It all starts with a mission statement. It could start with a mission statement because your mission statement can absolutely identify and tell your franchise partners what we believe this partnership looks like. And I think someone mentioned there's never, ever mentioned in any FDD.
Absolutely. So why do franchise relationships, why does franchise relations matter in general? Charlie, you want to kind of kick that off? What's the impact on it to the organization?
Well, I think you said it earlier. It's the economic engine that drives your business, right? These are our customers that without their being successful, we won't be successful. So from a very basic standpoint, they're feeding our royalty stream. They're feeding our families. They're feeding, our business and our growth. So it starts with, that economic engine that goes with it, but it's so much more.
Yeah. So who can give me a net outcome that would be valuable with good franchise relations? Who can give me a reason why? Why should I have good franchise relations? Yep.
Validation.
Absolutely. Validation supports system growth, right? Who else? Why does it matter? Yep. Okay. Thank you. That's perfect. Who else? Yes, sir.
Say collaboration. A lot of times new ideas, when we have open communication, instead of trying to hide what they're doing from us, they'll bring it to us, maybe develop new processes.
True. More ideas? Yep.
Avoid litigation.
Perfect. Avoid disputes. I have that here. Anyone else? Yep.
Rising tide lifts all ships.
I'm sorry, a little louder, please.
Rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah. Absolutely, yes.
It's just fun. Why do you want to work with people you don't get along with?
Yeah. Anyone else? Because there's a few here that are really powerful. Okay. Am I missing hands? No. Builds trust, right? Which is absolutely critical. I would suggest that we're going to bring the idea of AI to our franchisees or other groundbreaking technologies or innovations. If we've got great relationships with franchisees, there's enough trust there for them to dive in and work with us on these kind of projects. If there's not, it's another shiny object corporate is chasing. Have you guys ever heard that yet? Any established franchisors? I've heard a lot. Increases productivity, increases overall satisfaction. So anyway, I mean, I don't want to beat this to death, but I just think this is a place where you can win and it's not really hard in an organization and really feel good about doing it. This is a place where franchise relations and relationships are about doing the right thing by another human being. And I think that in itself just says a lot about it. But
I think there's one other really important piece here too, and that's we're all seeing the speed of change in our business. We heard yesterday at one of the keynotes about the ice cream story at Sonic. I mean, their innovation that we're able to push through our systems starts with either from the ground up with a franchisee experimenting on their own, or we have to institute a change or a pilot program to help them do it. So having good relations and trust allows us to have that speed of change. I'm not the same business I was a year ago, a month ago, or even a week ago. And so we have to have that Kaizen mentality, and it starts with having the trust and confidence of your channel so that they can actually help you develop and evolve.
yeah,
I would also add, especially for emerging brands, there is no brand recognition yet, right? It is all about the people and relationships in the beginning. As far as people, every franchise that we award, every single person that comes to meet the team day ends with, Richie, I'm buying you. I'm believing in you in this concept. There is no real strong brand presence yet. So if you think about people, that's what relationships is all about. And if they're telling me point blank that I am buying you, and then I don't create an ecosystem that allows for them to have access to me, I'm not creating structure around that strategy as far as creating market meetings where we go into markets and we actually pull all the franchise partners together and we actually have dialogue and talk about best practices, and I'm present in that meeting to listen to not only their needs and their wants, but how is our system working? I think that's so important. You have to fight against, I think, doing the right thing and what other people may want you to do in the franchise world. And we really, for the first half, really struggled with that of listening to other people's advice. Like some of the advice that we were given was, you don't really want to be too involved and you really want to be hands off. We're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We want to be thoroughly involved and we want to have an amazing relationships with our partners. And that goes back to the original conversation of what kind of relationship do you want to have with your franchise partners?
yeah.
And then putting the infrastructure around that so you can actually have those types of relationships and have those types of resources in play.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to add something very simple, but something that we live by at Lime. So Lime stands for love, integrity, mission, and excellence. We're a values-based company. And when I'm asked, what is a values-based company, for me, it's very simple. So many times people will act differently in the business setting than they do in their personal lives. And I say that a values-based company is being the same person that you are in your personal life in the business setting. So, you guys have shared so many different things, and we've heard from the panel, but I think it just comes down to people, and I just wanted to add that very simple point.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. So, how many of you heard a franchisee say, if I had only been told that when I joined, or if I only knew I had to? Have you guys heard that before in your systems? So, we believe, we talked about this as a panel before this event, that managing expectations is extremely important. And so, Charlie, maybe you can start with, how do you do that? When do you start managing expectations so you can avoid some of those kind of issues?
Starts before you sign a franchise agreement. I mean, part of validation really should be in encouraging your prospect to talk to your franchisees about what it's like to be a franchise in our organization. What do you get from the HQ team? What can you lean on? What do they do well? What are you self-reliant on? So I think it begins early in the validation process as you qualify prospects to be in your system. Do they fit what you can support? So the worst thing we all can do is bring the wrong person into our network. And so I think I really encourage my validators, and while I don't coach them, I do encourage them to have honest conversations about what it's like to run our business, because they have to know that going in, because that sets the expectations. That sets the table for conversations going forward with us. So it happens really early in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts from the panel?
I would build on what you mentioned around the franchise owners. Culture is so important, and the franchise owners drive the culture. So, as you're a franchisee considering joining a franchise system, as you're going through validation, that's exactly what you're doing. You're confirming that, this is the culture for me. And meet the team day, discovery day, whatever you call it. I love how this is becoming a franchise development topic, but that's where the expectations are set. And the franchise owners in the system, what we've experienced, they organically become passionate about communicating what the culture is. And they hold that close to their heart. They're very passionate about talking about their business, but they're also very passionate about protecting the culture. So, for us, it's the franchise owners during validation, doing a great job of doing just that. At Discovery Day, we invite our franchise owners to Zoom in during Discovery Day. So they're there at Discovery Day. We'll have 12 to 15 different franchise owners on the screen, and they're ushering in new franchise owners and they're starting to set the tone for what that relationship will look like.
I've got 2 grown children, and I never worried about my boys as long as they brought home good friends. If they have good friends, then chances are they're doing good things. I feel the same way about franchise development, franchisees. I ask each of my franchise validators after they have a conversation, did you like them? If they liked that person, if they felt that they were respectful, they asked good questions, they were prepared, they did the right things to have that conversation, then chances are they're probably a pretty good fit. Yeah. When I get feedback that says, not really, I didn't really like that person, then they're probably not a very good fit for my organization. So I think just like with my kids, who you surround yourself with, your friends, are a reflection of you. And I think that's the start of culture as well, is that building that body of that ecosystem of your network really begins at the core of your culture.
Excellent, excellent. Any thoughts from the audience? All makes a lot of sense. It's pretty straightforward. How important is communication, Richie, to franchise relations, and maybe what tools or cadence do you guys use?
Yeah, I don't need to tell you how important communication. I mean, communication, it fits right into relationship. There is no relationship if there's not communication. We try to set that up in many different ways. Again, I just mentioned the market meetings where we all get together as franchise partners and we rank the business as far as our business is really on three pillars: the talent, the brand, and the operations. And there's many competencies underneath those pillars of talent, brand, and operations. And we give our franchise partners an opportunity to rank from 1 to 10, barely making it to 10. And we talk about those pillars of talent, brand, operations. And if somebody is, ranking themselves as a 5 under that pillar, and we talk about it, and we let them actualize, I guess, the direction that they need to go on from the other franchise partners. So a part of that also is really having our franchise partners have a voice in the system, which a lot of franchise partners really appreciate that and want that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think engagement is the hard part here. How do you have engaged partners? You can communicate newsletters and town hall meetings, which we do monthly, but it's all about, really, you had mentioned it before, they reach out when they're in trouble or they need help. How do you get connected with them when they don't? And it's about adding value. And back to expectations early on, you have to be adding value all the time. So it's worth their time to consume whatever you're communicating. And it's really difficult for us because I love the market meetings because you're pulling. And that's a great feedback loop because it's easy to push content. It's easy to push. They don't have to, they can accept it or not. But what's really hard is to pull. And the market meeting is a great way to do that, in that having that dynamic feedback loop so you're getting understanding of what they value. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that feedback loop wrapped around value, you're not delivering the message that they're going to consume because they see value in it.
Awesome. How many of you feel like you're communicating well or communicating enough with your franchisees? By a show of hands. Hold them higher, please. Okay, how many feel like you could do better? Okay, excellent. A couple of thoughts on that. One is we created an engagement rating for our franchisees. I don't know if, because you really want to get a sense of how involved they are. An engagement rating can be you can utilize whatever your strategies are. If you have town hall meetings, you have newsletters, you have annual conferences, regional meetings, you have whatever forums you have, you can put a value on participation in each of those, and you can create an engagement score for the franchisee that your franchise business consultants can share with the franchisee and talk about how important that engagement is. And so it's not a bad idea to put that concept out there where you're seeking to create an engagement level in the organization, and you're driving towards that with your franchisees.
Is there a correlation between engagement and success?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, do you see your top 10 engagement as also your top 10
Absolutely.
producers?
Absolutely. That's
Duh.
exactly why we did it.
Right.
I would hope at the end of the session, guys, you would have a very clear strategy on what that communication plan looks like through these suggestions. Not just, a relationship that says I show up to the meetings, but a very mapped out strategy of this is how we communicate. This is how we build relationships with our franchise partners. And what is my role going to be in that as the CEO or whatever the role may be? I was also just thinking, to build a Celebrate School from award to open is 21 months. It's a long time. And we're talking real estate, and we're talking leases and moving dirt and building a school. And we use FranNet, I believe, FranData. So each time one of our franchise partners hits one of those milestones, they just signed their letter of intent, I send them a reminder, congratulations. Every single milestone in that 21-month journey, I connect with them by a text or a call saying, congratulations, you just started construction, congratulations. So, when I show up to the groundbreaking or the ribbon cutting, it's not like I haven't seen you in 21 months. It's I was with you the entire journey, and I think that's been a big piece of Celebrate's success also.
The other thing, too, is this relationship that you're building is going to cut out the conversation 5, 6, 8 years in when renewal starts coming to mind. What am I getting from my royalties? You're getting this relationship. I actually look at it as you're getting a full-time or part-time staff person that's an expert in your business in all disciplines.
Yep.
And then, whether it's marketing and lead generation or product delivery and operations, you're getting somebody on your team that knows everything about your business. That's what you're getting out of the royalty stream. And so they have to understand that. It only happens with that relationship, that communication, the understanding of what we're doing and trying to help them.
I think that's such a good point too, because most people believe franchising is, I have this brand or I have this business and I've built process and procedures and have put tools towards it. But none of that really matters if the relationship isn't intact. If they don't know how to use the tools, and don't know how to use the processes, and doesn't understand the brand and the mission and what we're out to accomplish, the tools and the processes are meaningless.
Well, just think what we just saw, this AI conversation. I'm taking back going, okay, now how do I put into 2024's business plan more AI? Could that sound like you said, another corporate, idea that, we're just
object, yep.
shiny object, squirrel, what you said this morning? Same kind of thing. Without having the trust and confidence that I have with my channel, my network, they're going to ignore that conversation. I'll wait till they perfect it versus adopt it early enough to where they can actually move the business.
I love what Charlie just said. This builds trust and confidence. So when we start to implement new things into the brand, they're very respective of that. I mean, you hear horror stories of because there's a lack of relationships when companies go to implement something new, everybody's like, we don't want to be a part of that. We're not willing to make the investment in that. And if that relationship is strong because they know that we're both out to accomplish the same thing, which is success and create wealth for our families, there's very little to no pushback on those ideas.
Yeah.
We're successful about 75% of the time of the things that get rolled out. I'm honest about that. Not everything that we're going to implement is going to work. But I paid for that. Yes, you have to execute it, but I paid the development costs. I paid for product development. I paid for the programming. As a franchisee, you didn't have any of those investments. A normal small business would have to incur in program and product development. I'm doing that, and 75% hit rate is pretty goddamn good when you think about it that way. And so I'm not bashful about saying, hey, look, not everything's going to work, but I need you to try it. We think our pilots are telling us this is going to work. We'll continue to improve upon it, but we need you to adopt this, and it's not costing anything you more than its execution.
Awesome, thank you. This gentleman had a question.
Yeah, I just want to see if we can pivot the conversation. We talk about all of our top performers and so forth. Do you guys have any best practices or strategies to get our bottom folks to bubble up to the top? Maybe we can kind of talk about that as a rule, because we all celebrate our winners, but most importantly is we want to make sure that our folks that are down here, we want everyone to win. What are you currently doing right now to make everyone winners?
Yeah. Why don't you, I have some thoughts on that, but please go ahead.
Yeah, there's, we want to push as the franchisor, right? And we're talking around how much engagement are we getting and how do we get more engagement. Feedback is important, right? So we're talking around feedback. And all too often, we're going to push because we have the great idea, we learned something new. But the franchise owners are also owners in the business, right? And they're very passionate about being an entrepreneur. And when we're making decisions top down, even if it's great, they want to be included. So I think very simply communicating and directly asking and including them in projects really gets them fired up and initiates that engagement. But including them in the feedback, that would be one suggestion that I would make.
I would look at that as like a two-part question. For us, it was our franchise partners got better once we improved our vetting in the beginning. right? Trying to teach somebody after the fact or get somebody to perform after the fact is very, very difficult. So we started bringing on better franchise partners, which would meet the top 10% once we improved our vetting system in the very beginning. And then the ones that we say, made it in before the improvement of the vetting system, we just hold them accountable. And after a while, they start to realize maybe this isn't something that's for me. And then we're able to move them out of the brand and move somebody else into the brand. And at this point, that's a very small number, but we're just taking those schools and giving them to some of our top performers already. And that's been our strategy. But improving the vetting system in the beginning will cure a lot of that.
I mentioned a moment ago, the first 5 years I made lots of mistakes. I took the checks, brought the wrong people in. And those people, were sitting in the bottom of my lower quartile. We dispatched franchise business coaches to assist them. And if they accepted it, it didn't cost them anything. We're going to review your KPIs. We're going to put a remediation plan in place. As long as you stay and make the weekly calls and you do what the franchise business coach says, then you can stay in the system and we'll continue to support you at no cost. Almost all cases, when they don't stay in the process, we start moving to a transfer and we end up selling the business. And it's not something that we can do overnight. It's usually a 2 or 3 or 4 month process to get a new owner in place, and then we have to go through that education system. But the bottom quartile, they either need to get on the team, we provide the extra coaching to do it, or they need to leave the team.
Yeah, and I'd say transparency is key. So put everybody's numbers out there.
So I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of experience with this. Very interesting. So I had the mindset that I'm not going to let any franchisee fail and I'm going to leave nobody behind. And it's a beautiful mindset. And so I started pouring a ton of energy into what we'll call the bottom 10%. And not that we weren't supporting everyone else, but it was obvious to everyone in the system, including the top performers, that all that energy was going into the bottom 10%, even a lot of financial resources. And so at a certain point, folks in the top 10% pulled me aside and said, hey, wait a minute, we love what you're doing, but what about us? Because we're not being rewarded for being the champions of the system. We're seeing you spend a lot of time with people that maybe be unwilling or unable to ever get to where you need them to be. And that was a big eye-opener for me, and it helped us to, A, determine if the people in the bottom 10% had the drive, the ambition, they were willing and able. And then B, if they were, to put a plan in place with accountability and to try to make those moves. But if that accountability lacked, if that didn't happen and we weren't able to help them move the needle, then it was a help them transition. And it was a healthy way to go. So there's an investment in time. You clearly care deeply, but you have the middle tier to keep moving up, and you have the top tier to learn from and to support. So that's my feedback. Thank you. One of the things I think Charlie might have touched on it briefly, but another tool that we use, I gave you the engagement score, which I highly recommend you think about, was having a communications plan or strategy. Now, what that means, very simply, is if you've got a variety of communication tools or processes or things you do that you interact with your franchisee, do they know it? Have you published it? Do you talk about it when you onboard a new franchisee, when the franchise development team is working with a new franchisee? Do they know these are the 8 or 10 ways we communicate? If you need this, you contact this department. If you need me, here's how you reach me. In other words, having a very transparent communications plan or policy so that people go in and their expectations are being met properly. Because I have seen organizations where the franchisee is like, look, I called Charlie, I couldn't get Charlie, I waited for his assistant, and not that that would ever happen, but the point is, if your own team doesn't know what the expectations are about how they're supposed to communicate with your franchisees, having a very specific, clear path to who owns what in communication is critical to preserving the whole effective nature of communication. Shannon made a comment also about negativity in the office, jumping subjects a little bit. You guys heard that? And I think there were some heads that nodded there. And it's not like people are extremely abrasive. It could be a casual comment like, I don't know what they want from me, meaning the franchisees. I'm doing the best I can. I loved what Shannon said. I crushed that from the start, personally, because what happens is it creates a us and them language versus a we language. And so I hope you took that home yesterday, because I thought it was cornerstone to great franchise relations. And then Richie has some strong feelings. I think the question is, do words matter and the way we talk about each other? And one of the ones for me that I've always struggled with, and Richie's the first guy that said, I hate that, which I love. Can you embellish on what I'm alluding to?
Yeah, I talked about it a little bit earlier of setting the tone of this relationship of not calling our franchise partners franchisees, because to me that sounds very transactional. And I think this is probably one of why Nick's so successful, and he said that, and one of the reasons Celebrate's so successful is setting the tone around the culture. Who are we going to be, and what does this relationship want, how we want it to look like, and then from there you can start putting strategy behind it, language behind it, and people in place. The one thing I also want to touch on real quick, and I'm sure everybody's business here is at different stages, but your franchise business consultant is really the success of our companies. If they're really the ones out there that are driving this culture and this relationship. So wherever you're at in your stage, spending time with your FBCs and making sure that they're representing the brand and the culture well, I think is critical. If that's not in place, or if you have no idea how they're representing your brand and what relationship they're building or what kind of relationship do they have, even down to, we've decided that for every 10 Celebrate schools will be one FBC, and that is like unheard of in our industry, or even in franchise. One FBC for every 10. That's how strong we want our relationships with our franchise partners.
Awesome. I was actually, give me one sec, Charlie, alluding to the use of words like ZOR and Z. Even in the office, I don't know if you guys think I'm all wet on this, but the idea of reducing that relationship to the Z, and even calling ourselves a ZOR. You may walk away thinking that was my own personal issue, but I feel strongly that it labels us when we're all hardworking human beings trying to build a brand and build a system and create something. So it's something I've felt strongly about. Charlie, did you want to add on to that?
I think one of the things that we've all kind of slipped into post-C word, is that we've gotten so Zoom focused. We're so remote, so viral. I mean, look what's happened in like the last 48 hours, where we're all face to face. We're learning from each other. You know, we've had face to face conversations, one-on-one. And the relationship has to happen that way. It happens, whether it's your discovery day or at a conference. It's really important to make time to make those connections, to be face-to-face, because you hear things differently. We form relationships differently. And I think it's something that it's easy, we all slipped into with Zoom and Teams and things like that. But I would encourage, every time I travel, I'll see 3 franchises this week while I've been on the road. I make a point whenever I'm traveling to see folks. And just drop in have a lunch or a cup of coffee, and it doesn't have to be anything more than that, just knowing that I cared enough to see them.
Awesome.
I was actually surprised of how many hands went up when Steve asked the question of how many of you guys want to have a better relationship or communication. Can we just get some thoughts from the audience around that? I was actually really surprised at how many hands went up. Like, is there something wrong with the relationship? You just don't know how to have a relationship? I mean, what's behind those hands?
Speak for my company, we're rehabilitating a 20-year brand. So historically, the operations department was very, very small, and across 80+ units of owners, my team now has to go ahead and fix essentially all the wrongs we had.
Got it.
I raised my hand. We do a survey a couple times a year. Are we asking our franchisees basically how are we doing? Not just against our priorities, but just how are we doing? And always communication is one of the first things they say we have to improve. Every survey for the last 10 years we've done it comes back with more communication. And it's not like we're not pushing a lot out, we're not asking the questions coming in, but everybody sees it differently. How they want to communicate with you is different. And so you have to have different vehicles, you have to have different forums. And I think it's a continuous improvement process no matter what. We always have to be better at this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that was so important, right? It's
Can you repeat the question real quick and then, right? 'Cause
My
the first
question?
on this I didn't know. This gentleman's comment.
his comment was that he's trying to unwind something that's been in place for 40 years, which is extremely difficult. So the takeaway of that is the fact, like, let's not get to 40 years. Let's not get to 1 year. Let's not get to 5 years. Let's address this. And what they say, I don't know what the phrase is, how do you kill a monster when it's little or something like that, right? Let's address this now as we're building these brands and making sure that this communication, this relationship is totally intact. So we're not trying to do something different, change culture 40 or 5 years from now. That's extremely, extremely difficult. When we first started, I knew before we even started franchising that we needed a total rebranding. I didn't want to start, awarding franchises and get 20 or 50 franchise partners and then say, oh, we're going to rebrand now. That would just be horrible. So we spent a lot of time in the beginning rebranding and making those improvements before we launched into franchising.
Yeah, I think two things that are critical. One is radical transparency. I think Shannon said that yesterday. The other is radical candor. And what I mean by radical is you can say anything to a franchisee or a franchise organization as long as it's true. It's a well-educated comment where it's not just you're saying something for the sake of saying it. I'll give you an example. I went into an organization after I sold PostNet and took over as their CEO, and they had a lot of issues and challenges around their technology platform and a number of things. And I basically just said, listen, let's stop. Let me hear all of the business issues. If they're relevant business issues, and I'm sure there are if you're this frustrated, we're going to sit down as a team, we're going to look at them, and we're going to make changes. And we'll deal with it one-on-one. In other words, we're pushing the reset button, and I'm here to listen and to help. And so I wouldn't be uncomfortable in a mature organization, in a leadership role, to be able to say, we understand how things might have been done, we understand what your perception may be, but it's a new day, a new leader, and it's time to reset this organization and push for a hard reset. Because what people want is they just want to know they're being heard and the action is going to occur. Not just that they had a problem, it's a long-term problem, we keep sweeping it under the rug. No more of that. It's radical transparency, radical candor, and accept nothing less. And people will rally around that, I promise you.
The other thing that helps the franchise relation is profitability.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're making money, they're happy. And so if you can do nothing to do anything besides helping to be more successful, that's going to solve most of your franchise relation issues, is if they're profitable.
Yeah. So, guys, what are the must-haves for building a foundation for great franchise relationships? There are some concepts, tools, ideas. There's a lot. I have a long list here. Does anyone want to start at what are the must-haves? And then we can fill in the gaps and see what the audience thinks.
For us, it was, as I mentioned, just coming up with a mission statement. Who are we? Who are we here to serve? And then building a really strong strategy behind the mission statement. And then your language, your behaviors, your actions will all follow that if you really use strategy and mission the way it is supposed to be used.
Awesome. What do you guys use right now? What are some of the things you do and use for building great franchise relations?
We do a franchise conference every year.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Franchise conference.
Thank you. I'm sorry. His franchise conference, which is a great place to build relationships with franchisees. Anyone else? Yeah.
I think he said it, accessibility, having access to the different departments, knowing the strategy, knowing the bandwidth,
Yep.
That's very frustrating up front for a franchisee not to know who to call for what. Having a clear vision calms anxiety.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
So we were talking about like communication, and at first, you know, with the franchisee, there's a lot of community, and when they sign, everyone's excited, discover dates, so on. And then there's a drastic change in community because it drops off your independence, you're in your area. So creating community after that with the other franchisees around, with headquarters, with them to, you know, feel continually supported and a part of the community outside of just once it's over, then you're on your own. And no more, to not be as independent as you have.
Yeah. So I had a little trouble hearing you, but I think what you said was it starts out with a lot of communication and putting processes in place or ensuring that communication stays steady and frequent. Is that what I heard? Or
I think it was, I could just be a little louder. I think it was about like, there's a lot of community at first, right? When you're there, you're with everybody, you're with the team, you meet the team, and it's new and exciting. And then there's a dramatic drop off. Once you leave, you're on your own, you're independent, you're running it yourself. So ways to bring that community after that, I think is vital because then it shows continual support with everyone you're around. And I guess, you know, a higher chance of being successful because you've had people around you and you can talk to them.
yeah. So let's talk about ways. What are some of the ways?
So one thing that we do is that we have an external facing Slack channel in all these different departments where the franchisees all can talk to each other and learn from each other. So when
Okay.
there's different departments they're struggling with, they can chat about that. And just give them more channels of conversation
Yeah.
outside of a casual phone or an email or text message like that. Just being unique in ways that you can have those channels.
Yeah. Did this side of the room hear any of that?
No,
Ish.
I feel
So
like I'm screaming.
no, you are screaming, but there's a lot of loud background noise in here too. I'm glad it's not just me. But basically what he was saying is having these channels of communication. One method they used is franchisees supporting franchisees. Would that be a good way to describe it?
Like Slack, like just have like an
Yeah.
external facing Slack channel for all the different departments around. So different franchisees have marketing questions. Let the franchisees in other areas all be able to talk about that in one area.
So some franchisors, he's saying give them a place to communicate and collaborate. How many of you have message boards now? Are they utilized? Ish? I will tell you ours were incredible. And they were utilized because franchisees got responses and answers as much from themselves as they did from us. So I would say if you have a message board because you just put it out there because you think it's a good thing for franchisees to have and you don't want them to do it themselves, wrong reason, bad reason. If you put a message board out there, start using it. Start asking franchisees questions. Get franchisees engaged and involved. It becomes a powerful asset. And I think what I heard you say is the organization becomes self-supporting.
Yes.
Yes. And I experienced that at PostNet because they'd rather ask a franchisee, oh, that is awesome. Thank you so much. They'd rather ask a franchisee how much they're charging locally, what they're paying locally for labor, than us, who we're kind of dealing at a national level. So awesome. Thank you. Great input. Okay, give me some other tools and concepts. Yeah.
Just if I could build on that for a second, I am a franchisee with 700 other franchisees in that mix. We have a Slack channel. Interestingly enough, the headquarters folks that are not doing the job day to day don't have access to it. It is solely 100%. It is solely 100% made up of the 700 plus franchisees. And I learn every single day something from somebody else. And if I have a question about how to execute something within my franchise, I just put it out on the table and ask those questions.
Yeah.
So it is the lifeblood of what we do communication-wise and building that.
Awesome.
It's also a value to be able to support everybody else within the organization through that kind of communication.
Yeah. No, I love it. Anyone else want to contribute? The question on the floor is, what else can we use and do to build a great foundation? Yes, ma'am. And by the way, we have the amazing David Barr, because we're all going to go far with David Barr right now.
We have a weekly growth meeting for our new owners where we Zoom with them. We have our Director of Franchise Success sitting next to me who takes care of them at 2 o'clock on Mondays, every Monday. And we have some of our established franchises that will actually come to that meeting too, so everybody knows if they need something, they can come at 2 o'clock on Monday.
Awesome. Anyone else? David. I love you, David. We'll come back to you too.
One thing we do is we do a monthly conference call with the entire system, open to every franchisee. All the department heads present to the franchisees what's going on for the upcoming month, and also a little recap of what happened in the last 30 days, so they feel like they're constantly getting sort of updates on what happened and what's going on in the next 30 days. Easy to do, too.
I love it. Super easy to do. Does anyone do any kind of town hall meeting, fireside chat, whatever you want to call it? I know we do here on the panel. Anyone do that before? So I can tell you that, and then I'm going to get more sharing. At our annual conference, I would just sit with hundreds of franchisees and basically be in the firing line of, okay, tell me what you think I need to know as your leader. Talk to me, and then you put yourself right out there, but it's so respected and appreciated, and it's an amazing way to create a feedback channel and build trust.
Yeah,
And
real
it
quick
just
also,
has to be,
As long as you listen and not get defensive.
well, the feedback loop,
Yeah.
which is critical to everything we're talking about now, is if you're just listening and taking in all this information without action, that's very dangerous.
Yeah, we've also done that at our annual conferences, having 6 or 7 franchise partners on the panel, and just as we're doing right now, have our franchise partners ask the questions, and it went on for 2 hours, and it could have went on for another 2 hours. It was just hearing directly from our franchise partners, whether what stage of development they're in or what the cycle. It was very, very, very valuable.
Awesome. Yes. Oh, wait, I know that we missed this gentleman over here, didn't we? I'm sorry, David.
I was just saying, with our franchisees, and we have a lot of them that we're building the relationship back up with, is in the smallest situation exceeding the expectations. And so to the point about, like, we have unforeseen updates that happen in the home care industry, we just immediately open up and advertise office hours, where we send out the Teams meeting, anybody can join, ask any question. We pride ourselves on communication prior to a situation, but that's not always possible. So we immediately want to get that accessibility out there and exceed what they think they can have.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have a fairly new brand, and we have a absentee model. So we have managers and owners, and so we've tried to do kind of the weekly calls. We've tried a monthly call, and so we're having a hard time differentiating, what content to provide to owners, and then what's for managers. And so it tends to be the managers are more engaged. We only have 5 that are open. There's like 15 in production, but owners tend not to hop on those. So I'm just wondering if you have any feedback on differentiating it, or how to go about doing that at the beginning.
Well, you're talking with the managers of the business. And so our obligation is to our franchise partners. So if our franchise partners want to engage their managers, their directors, which we highly suggest because they're really the ones that are truly driving the business, but we're not going to have a meeting if the franchise partner is not present. That's not our employee.
For us, we start our monthly meetings with our KPIs, the leaderboard, and every owner wants to know how they rank, with everybody else. So the leaderboard on the different KPIs is what keeps the owners tuning in to see if their teams are doing a good job. So if they're semi-absentee or owner-operator, they want to know where they stand. It's competitive. And we're in the sports business, so they're all competing. They're used to it. They want to win. And they don't like it when they're not, in that top quartile.
Okay, in the interest of time, I want to just kind of go through a quick list. We hit a lot of these already, but advisory councils, subcommittees, working groups, obviously are great franchise relations tools. Regular, standardized, expected communication with feedback loops is critical. Reward and recognition programs. Some of you may do that at your conference, but there are other opportunities. Franchisee recognition is a very powerful tool. It incentivizes franchisees. It creates a lot of goodwill, so you ought to think about where and how you can offer that kind of an opportunity. We talked about annual meetings and regional conventions, and then obviously the whole idea of transparency, responsiveness, honesty, all of the things you would expect from any kind, considerate human being is the right things that should be happening. All right, I think we're going to run into a last round of a couple of thoughts. Nick, you had raised the question about a lot of emerging brands, a lot of the trust lies in the founder and their ability to be everywhere. And I can tell you as a founder, there were times when franchisees would say to me, oh, I don't know if something's changed, you're not as involved. Well, what changed was we went from 1 to 400 franchisees. And so you had some thoughts on how a founder should think about transcending that with the organization.
Sure. It was ironic for me because, before I got into franchising, I wrote a book called Get Limed. And in there, I talked about community and collaboration and harnessing the greatest power of the franchise model, which is the collective talents of the franchise owners. But ironically, I found myself doing the opposite. And it was really this founder conundrum where, you emerge, you have your first 10 franchise owners, you can call them up at, on a Tuesday and say, let's meet and get on Zoom at 4 o'clock, and everybody's there. And all of a sudden, as Stephen mentioned, you find yourself with many franchise owners, and that changes. So, myself and our team, we're head down building systems, implementing process, building out the departments, implementing technology, you name it. We're head down, and our intent was to support and build a responsible franchise system. But in the meantime, we were not communicating. And so what does communication do? Creates trust and transparency. So we found ourselves as a new brand going through a period of time where we had some growing pains around what we had set out to do, which was ironic. But I feel very passionate about this subject. As a business major, as I shared, I joined the IFA before I started franchising, feel like I'm a student of the franchise world. But yet, this communication piece, totally over my head. And I really feel passionate that this is a founder dilemma when you hear, hey, franchising is a different business than whatever you do. As a founder, you're used to making all the decisions. For me and my paint company, we just make all the decisions. It's now. When you become a franchisor, you have to create a community and communication and cadence for feedback. You're now in a business partnership with many different people, and they all want input. So we, had our initial 10 owners, and they got past being, they were drowning in information. Now they're confident, they want to contribute to the business, but as I mentioned, we were head down building the business. And so much of what Stephen mentioned, once we implemented it all, trust went through the roof, and we got back on the same page and never turned back. But if I could share anything, I hope that this panel can provide you, what went over my head unintentionally.
Awesome. So Zach is here reminding us of the time. I hope. They're going to shoot me. Oh, here comes Brad. I hope this was useful, and it was a good use of your time. I'm going to offer you an asset to use if you need it. Something pops up, or you think, wow, I wish the panel would have gone over this. You can email me at steve@sgreenbaum.com. Steve at the letter S, Greenbaum, GREENBAUM.com. If you have questions for the panel, I'll make sure they get them as well. And that way, if something comes up or you run into an issue, you've got a resource past this meeting. We had one fun finish, which was talking about our biggest mistakes in franchise relationships, but we'll save that for another day. But I want to thank our panel. You guys were amazing.